Chapter 115, Assassination. A few days later, Broly was training under high gravity. Incoming call. An emotionless voice sounded out. Accept. Broly answered without stopping his basic body workout. Hey Broly, Daz here. What's up? Sorry to bother you, but the new galactic patroller, Krino, now in charge of this branch, had asked me if he and his assistant can meet you. Meet me? Why? He said that he prevented you from seeing their king when you visited. He wanted to apologize for his actions. Oh, that fellow. Tomorrow morning in the throne room after that, General. In the very center of the city was a palace built with a throne room. The palace was meant to be his public residence, but he at most used the throne room for official business. The villa he was currently residing in was only for him and his wives. That was why there were robot maids, instead of normal ones like in the palace. All right, I will bring him and his assistant there at 9 in the morning. Sure. Broly hanged up the phone call. Wait, did he say him and his assistant? Why would his assistant be there for an apology? Whatever. Maybe he had some other business with me. Broly continued training without bothering with that thought anymore. The next day, Broly sat on his throne, resting his face on his fist after sending an elvish general away. The general had requested for his squad to be there when they conquered a planet for the Myrmidons. Obviously, he wanted to make some contribution and hoped to be promoted. That was why he already requested it, even though the Myrmidons aren't even here yet. The early bird gets the worm. He was the only one yet, since the others were apprehensive of conquering a planet even if there weren't any civilizations. After all, they were on the receiving side not long ago. The gigantic throne door was slowly opened, and a maid let two individuals inside. Broly's eyes constricted after seeing a maid open the door. Normally a guard would open it, and he also couldn't see any guard in front of the room. Although it looked like this Krino guy he had met when he visited the Galactic King, he instantly knew that only the appearance was the same. The life force and key signature were different, even though it seemed to be somewhat masked. Besides, this one seemed to be able to use magic, as it was the most prominent energy inside his body. His assistant was the same, and this was something no one in the Galactic Patrol had. He saw right through them the moment he saw them. Krino didn't leave behind much of an impression, but it was still too easy for him to notice something was wrong. He silently looked at them slowly approach him. After they advanced right in front of the stairs of the throne, Krino seemed to kneel down, but before his knee touched the ground, the assistant opened her mouth to a frightening degree, showing off her fangs. In an instant, green liquid spewed out of her mouth directly at Broly, who leisurely created a key sphere blocking the liquid in the air. Meanwhile, the assistant's black eyes suddenly glowed white. A mental attack. Without being able to react to the sneak attack, Broly's mind was stunned for a fraction of a millisecond. However, this was enough for Krino to make his move. The key sphere had shattered after losing his focus and coming into contact with the liquid. In this split second, Krino arrived in front of Broly and placed his hand on his chest. Rip. A ripping sound, like a muscle was torn apart, sounded out in his chest. Broly stabilized his mind and punched out. It landed squarely in the stomach of Krino. Like a cannonball, his body shot through the air, directly into the wall next to the door. Broly quickly stood up and wanted to make a move, but he lost balance and fell on his knee. Blurg. Broly spewed out blood as he clenched his chest with his hand. Cough. Cough. I didn't expect for you to recover from Sina's attack so quickly. You must have some exceptional mental strength. Good thing we don't play around. Ha ha ha. The disguise of Saiyan flickered out like a broken hologram, revealing his thin blue skin and the horn on his forehead. Let me introduce myself. I am Sin, an assassin, if you didn't notice. Oh man, your punch hurt. Broly slowly looked up. His cold gaze pierced Sin. Oh, scary. What are you going to do now? Cough. Your heart muscle is already torn apart, and it won't take long until you die. Sina was looking at Broly like he was already dead. Just finish it and leave. Sina said coldly. Sure. Sin walked towards the crouching Broly. Broly looked at the ground before closing his eyes. He thought about what happened just a moment ago. The assistant used some kind of corrosive magic attack. While he was dealing with that attack, she followed up with a soul attack that was entirely focused on disrupting one's mind. In that moment, Saiyan had already closed the distance and used his ability, which caused his own life force to turn against him, directly bursting the cells in his heart. This ambush alone used 3 different powers in a single moment to completely throw off the opponent. Those energies weren't something just any hillbillies can use. In fact, those powers were rarities in the universe, and someone who can effectively use them together in a single attack was even rarer. He was too careless. He knew that something was wrong but was still caught off guard. If he had taken the initiative, he would have eliminated them easily. Sun bent down and tried to put his hand on Broly's head, but Broly suddenly stood up while causally using his hand to push Sen's away. Sen's eyes widened. He quickly thrusted his hand forward, directly placing his hand on Broly's chest like he did before. He started grinning before his face froze. Broly grasped Sen's wrists and twisted it to the sides, making Sen kneel down in pain. Arg. How? Your heart? Saiyan agonizing screams sounded out in the throne room. Sina was shocked as she saw this. She knew better than anyone that once someone touches Sin, their only fate that awaited them would be death. Broly's deep calm voice resounded out. His voice seemed to withhold the boiling rage inside him. I am going to bathe this place in your blood. His shout was accompanied with a terrifying force that cracked open the ground. The windows instantly shattered into thousands of pieces as the whole room was filled in a green light, blinding Saiyan and Sina. The moment they were able to see again, a 2.5 figure stared at them with unhidden and pure killing intent seething out of his body. His hair slightly glowed green and lightning appeared around him. I tell you who send us. Sun stuttered. After hearing that, Broly raised him in front of him by his arm. I will dash. Broly put his other arm on his shoulder and started to pull his arm and shoulder in opposite directions. The muscles in Sin's arm were slowly tearing apart, fiber by fiber. The agonizing screams filled the hall and extended out into the city for everyone to hear. Sina stared at how Broly cruelly ripped Sin's arm off. She started backing off unconsciously. Her mind was in utter chaos. She couldn't understand what was happening. In one moment, Broly looked like he was about to die. In the next, he had transformed to a terrifying monster. Sina was completely terrified, but her long time as an assassin had tempered her mind. She quickly backed away before turning around, going into a full sprint. As soon as she did, she bumped into a wall, completely blanking her mind. A wall? She looked at the abs she had crashed into. She slowly looked up as cold sweat was running down her back. She looked at the face in front of her, who was holding a miserable-looking Saiyan. Where do you think you are going? Sina was trembling heavily. Tears started to appear on her face. She stumbled backwards as she was losing herself to fear. Don't worry. I will take my time. Dozens of minutes passed with screams and snapping sounds coming out of the throne room. Chapter 116. Move out. I don't hear anything, Kana said quietly while looking at the palace. Normally Broly's aura or anyone's wouldn't leak out to the surroundings, since the training rooms greatly reduced any kind of leakage. Now in the middle of the city, Broly's ki leaked out and made the ground tremble. As soon as the spike of energy leaked out of the palace, Daz, Taro, Zangya and Kana had sprinted here, but they were only greeted by agonizing screams and beast-like growls. It sounded like a beast was mauling people to death, but they knew that it was Broly who was running wild in there. At this point, Daz was starting to sweat as it was the exact time. He had told the new patroller of the Galactic Patrol to be here. Something had to have gone terribly wrong. A while later, Aaliyah and Aze came flying over as well, but like the others, they didn't dare to step inside. A raging Broly wasn't something they were able to handle. If Broly lashed out, they wouldn't necessarily come out alive again. I don't hear anything either. Should we step in? Aaliyah said hesitantly. I'm going in with Daz. You secure the area. We don't want anyone to enter. Oh, and prevent anyone from leaving this planet either, just in case. Kana said before going in with Daz. It didn't take them long to arrive in the throne room, but the way felt much longer for the two as the time seemed to slow down by the menacing atmosphere. The ground and walls were covered in cracks and the windows were shattered. The only reason why the palace was still standing was because they had put extra effort into the durability of this building. It was the toughest building on this planet by far. They had finally reached the throne room. As soon as they saw the sight of the room, they took a sharp breath in. In the middle of the room was a pool of blood with splashes all around it. There were drops of blood tracing from the middle to the door. Next to it, a trace of something bloody being dragged back to the pool in the middle. There were bloody shreds spread all over the floor, but nothing resembled something complete. Nothing was bigger than a fingertip, with the exception of two heads in the middle of the pools. The heads were messily ripped off the shoulders, as they were slightly tilted on the stumps. The two faces had only bloody eye holes. The jaws were loosely dropping onto the ground while the teeth were scattered in front of the heads. Daz and Kana slowly looked up the throne at the sitting figure, who coldly stared at them. Broly was resting his head on his bloody palm. He slowly tapped his finger on his armrest like a metronome. It was the only thing that sounded out in the room. 2 assassins, Broly said coldly. Daz quickly kneeled down, touching the ground with his forehead. This is my fault. I didn't thoroughly check their profiles. This will never happen again. Broly's tapping stopped after Daz spoke. Who was in charge of the guards in front of the throne room? Her name was Brenna, an outstanding warrior from the new generation. Did she have a family? She was the lone child, but her parents are in good health. They live in District D. Tell them to meet me. Go and recover Brenna's body. She should be lying in a storage room in the back corner. Daz's eyes widened before he started gritting his teeth. Understood. Daz. In the future, double-check the identities and make sure all the incoming ships are received by us. Additionally, let our scientists look over this device and make some countermeasures. It can let the user appear as someone else, and if they have enough samples, it can even mask key signature. It appears to be a one-time use device though, so let the scientists know before they try it out. Broly pointed his finger at Daz, and a small bracelet flew towards him. You can leave. Understood. Daz stood up and sprinted out, making his way towards the storage room. He made his way to the end of the room and saw her cold body lying behind numerous boxes. She had a shocked expression on her face, and her mouth and chest was covered with dried blood. Broly looked at Kana, and his gaze softened a bit. Kana, tell the others to come in after I have spoken with Brenna's parents. All right. Do you need something else? Yes, I want you to confirm if anyone else was killed by the two. Afterwards, go to Earth and revive them with the Dragon Balls. Kana looked at him silently and already knew what storm Broly will cause. Understood. I am on my way. Kana left and told the others of the situation. After Broly had told Brenna's parents of the situation, they almost broke down. But Broly quickly told them about the Dragon Balls, which calmed them down greatly. It didn't take long until Brenna was revived again. She seemed to be the only victim of this whole assassination, besides Krino, but Broly couldn't care less about him. Shortly after everything calmed down a lot, the other powerhouses of Exausia, namely Aliyah, Taro, Kana, and Zangya, came into the now clean throne room. Today, I was targeted by two assassins going by the name of Saiyan and Sina. They were famous in the whole universe as someone who could kill almost anyone, even those above their strength. They were sent by an emperor of the Andromeda Galaxy, Mamba. He had promised them a pathetic solar system as a reward. It appears that since we didn't show ourselves to the public, they think we are some weaklings. They can eliminate whenever they want. AZ will stay here and keep watch over Exausia. If something happens, call us immediately. For the rest of you, every one of you gather a team of 10 till tomorrow. We will move out tomorrow and crush this fool's empire. Understood. The four quickly moved out and started to gather their teams. Oh, Mamba, I am going to squish your skull beneath my boot. Broly mumbled as killing intent was seething out of his body. The throne's armrest was already pulverized under his tight grip. In the next morning, Zangya, Aliyah, Kana, and Taro were standing sturdily on a platform. Behind them, 40 elite warriors with 4 spaceships. There were even some elves mixed in them. They had determined gazes as they looked at their king in front of them. By now, the assassination was already known by all in the city. Something like that spread like wildfire. Listen, we are going to the Andromeda Galaxy. Anyone who is in our way, kill. Don't spare a single person of Mamba's force. We are going to eradicate this empire. It shall only be remembered as the empire that dared to try assassinate a king. Ahu. Good. Now step inside your spaceship and move out. Without saying anything, they stepped inside, and shortly afterwards, they seemed to blink out of existence. Broly stepped inside his spaceship and disappeared as well. A few light years inside the borders of the Andromeda Galaxy, 5 spaceships appeared in the empty space. After emerging there, their engines started, and they sped off towards the spiral galaxy in front of them. Broly didn't know exactly where Mamba was since he was able to hide his key with some kind of devices, but he knew from Saiyan and Sina where his spaceship was last. The only reason why they knew of the location was because they could only be hired by someone of status. After hearing their names, Broly figured out that they were actually on the list of the top 100 strongest beings in this universe. They were at place 98 and 95 respectively. Of course, Mamba was on the list as well, placed 56. There was not much known about his abilities, but according to his rank, he should be somewhat formidable. Broly took his necklace off and put his battle armor on. He couldn't afford to play around. He still has no idea how high the difference between ranks was, but no matter how strong Mamba is or what abilities he had, he is going to die. This wouldn't be a fight. This will be a slaughter fest.